Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got a video about one of the three great mysteries of dry docking the battleships that we've found so far. That mystery is these bolted on access plates on the inboard side of the twin docking keels. There's one on each side, and I feel like those plates wouldn't be so much of a mystery if there weren't then also an interior access plate and all of these other bolt holes. So we had to do some searching to find out. Some of the shipyard guides thought that these might be evidence of keel coolers, which we'd never heard of before in reference to a battleship, so we had no idea what that might be entailing. And we asked some Navy folks who worked on steamships like this one. They said that steamships don't have keel coolers. That's not likely what those are. So continuing to look, it seems like that is where you access the coupling where the tail shaft meets up with the last segment of line shaft. So if you need to unbolt the tail shaft to pull it out of the ship when you're removing the propeller and other things like that, you can remove this access panel, go in there, and that's where the flange is on the coupling that you can unbolt. You can see one of these couplings on the outboard shafts. It's completely exposed, and it's more or less in the same place as this is. In service, those would have a fairing built around them, for the outboard shafts at least, to keep them a little bit more hydrodynamically efficient. Seems like those were removed while the ship was in mothballs. All right, so the plates are an access plate, but what's the rest of this setup? Well, my friend Erhard Kohler from MARAD gave me the idea. He worked on Wisconsin in 1989 when she was in dry dock number 4 next to us over here. And he had done some work in this part of the ship. And he said that he had found blueprint evidence that New Jersey had gotten some modifications that the other Iowas hadn't. So all of the American fast battleships suffer from vibration issues at high speeds. Well-known fact. For whatever reason, with the Iowa class, it's the inboard shafts that have the worst vibration issues. I would have thought it would be the longer outboard shafts, but it's the shorter inboard shafts. And maybe that's because they go through the fewest number of bearings. So the solution the Navy seems to have come up with sometime in the early 50s, maybe 1952, after her first Korean War deployment, the solution was, well, add an extra bearing. The bearings for the battleship use lignum vitae as the material that's in contact with the shaft. As a tropical hardwood, it's naturally oily, so it's pretty self-lubricating. And it is what would wear away as opposed to the steel propeller shaft. So they install this bearing, and that bearing does need a little bit of seawater lubrication, a little bit of seawater for cooling for the friction. So they decided to turn this part of the ship that was normally watertight into a free flood area. So they drilled something like 100 holes in the ship to do that. Well, it didn't solve the vibration issues, but it did cause a water intrusion issue. So they only did that to New Jersey. They didn't go back and do it to any of the other ships. And you can see the bolts that they put in these holes. It seems like that was an attempt to then plug those holes. Maybe those holes were left open throughout the ship's entire career and they were just bolted closed in mothballs. Whatever the case, over the last 30 years, it has failed and water was able to intrude into that space again. Now, fortunately, it was contained within that space and it didn't intrude anywhere else on the ship. So we didn't know it was an issue until we got the ship up on the blocks and water continued to leak out of there after the rest of the ship was dry. And you can notice that we've painted on both sides of it, but we have not painted that area because you've still got water streaking down. And you might be able to tell from the streaks that it's not just water, there's also an oil, another residue there as well. When the ship was mothballed, the Navy used a preservative oil, probably cosmoline or something very similar, to cover some of the unpainted surfaces in there, such as where the bearing is wearing on the paint, that sort of stuff. However, because of the water intrusion problem caused by the holes that were drilled there, and because the ship has been in the water longer than was expected, water got in there, mixed with the cosmoline, so now the water that is leaking out is oily water, which required us to contain it. Here you can see that we're containing the oily water that's being drained out of the other side, preparatory to painting that. You can see that in addition to the screws, before we blasted the paint off, there's also a like rubberized caulk type material that's covering that as well. So while we were initially confused and a little bit scared about what we were finding in there, it has not turned into that big of an issue. We're able to mitigate any sort of environmental impact it might have. And so it's going to be real simple to drain those, seal them up, clean, pressure wash the residual off of there, repaint it, and it should be sealed again until we're in dry dock next. So what do you think? Is this a feature you're going to add to your model of New Jersey? Let us know in the comment section down below. Or, since you can't really see between the twin docking keels, are you just going to leave it off? Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below for ways you can donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.